Okay, so first of all, I've put on the captions. If anything that shouldn't be there goes up, then I'm totally blaming Lizzie for whispering things into my microphone.
Definitely not my fault.
It's definitely not just my accent that the computer doesn't always recognise. So as Adam said, I'm the head of discovery and learning for BIAZA Education, so that's Edinburgh Zoo and the Highland Wildlife Park as well. And we have gone through a really interesting journey, as you've kind of heard from David a little bit this morning, some of the change that's kind of come about and some of the different ways of thinking. So what I thought I would do today is talk a little bit about the journey that discovery and learning have been on. Now, admittedly, I'm new to this role and I've only been with BIAZA for about 3 years, 3.5 years or so. So it is only a shortened version. If Amy was here today, she would be able to talk far more about the full journey because she's been here for like 14 years. So this is kind of our little journey and what we've gone through, and what I thought would be quite hopefully interesting is to talk about the journey that we've taken from looking at the strategy and everything and how we've actually developed that into what we're doing, what we're delivering, and the way that the team is working. So also my slides are images of animals that show generally how the feelings of myself and the team have been over the past kind of 2 years, 18 months or so. They don't necessarily link to what I'm saying. You can put your own feelings onto them, but lots of animals with all the feelings. So I think for me, the first thing is zoos and aquariums are ridiculously busy places. You come into the role and you hit the ground running no matter what role you're doing, and you go about 1,000,000 miles an hour, and you are doing your day-to-day alongside projects, alongside development, and there's just so much stuff going on, and it's exciting and it's ridiculous all at the same time. And I think because of that, it's really easy as an individual and as a team to become really focused on the very specific thing that you're working on. Even if you're working within a larger project, it's really easy to become like so focused on that one piece of project that you're doing. And I think one of the real silver linings about the kind of past year has forced us really to stop and to review and to have a look at how and what we're doing with things. And for us, one of the real silver linings was that we found partnerships and collaborations with teams that really had been quite, I guess, distant from us. I know it's a feeling that may be shared through other organisations, but I know we had conversations in the past before about how we feel like these kind of like weird discovery and learning people on the side over here, and we're not kind of integrated and embedded within the rest of the society. And whether that's a feeling or whether that's an actual thing that's happening, I think that's always, it definitely felt that way with us anyway. And that kind of had to be removed. With people working from home, with people being furloughed, there was all of a sudden like this real, just a small cluster of people working together from every department. And what's been amazing is that has then continued. So as people came back, because people had been forced to work like that for, 2-3 months, as people came back, they got brought into that. And what's been really lovely is that this huge period of change has actually forced us to look at things really differently, and forced us to look at how we work really differently as well. So David mentioned a little bit about looking at the strategy. So for us, during the pandemic, we got a new CEO and total new level of directors, and a new focus. So, no real change at all. For about 3 years since kind of just after I started working here, we've been working on a huge proposal for an NLHF funding bid for the Highland Wildlife Park. And we did loads of consultation with our communities in and around the Highlands and our communities in and around those members and staff. looking at what people knew about us, what people thought about us, and what they wanted to know and think about us, and how we could embed ourselves within the community. And this led to a really interesting set of aims and objectives that were really specific to this one project that we were going to do. And then when David started, it was really timely. Most of you will know Sarah Thomas. So she led on the BIAZA Education strategy, and that kind of came out just as he started. It was under review, and we were starting to look at it, and we were like, oh, actually, this is really cool, and we should be trying to embed some of this within our strategy. So one of the things that we've learned along the way is there's lots of drafts, because we started looking at the strategy back then, and it was under the same kind of 3 categories that we always had it as. So it was science, animals, and education. And then the Descriptor report came out. So I don't know if any of you are familiar with that. If you're not familiar with it, I highly suggest you do not read the entire thing unless you really are keen on reading. It's a lot, but they've got a great little summary document. And the WWF 2020 Living Planet report came out as well. And the real focus of all of this was kind of that economics of biodiversity, which actually links in really nicely to what Nicola was talking about some of her takeaways from COP26. And it was looking at social change and who the beneficiary of what we do is. And when we started putting all of this together, the strategy that we kind of thought was brilliant and almost there kind of got thrown out the window, and we looked at it again, and we looked at it in a really different way. So the strategy now stands as having engagement at its key. So it's engagement, communities, and research. And throughout all of that, they're not separate anymore. They all flow between each other. And for us, for discovery and learning, that has meant that there's been a huge kind of change and shift in the way that we work internally, and the opportunities that we're able to look at as well. So I guess that brings us on to what's that actually meant for us so far. A lot of kind of like, and in the headlights, because it has been scary and different, and alongside the pandemic and changing everything to be virtual, and looking at what we can deliver and how we can deliver. We've also been going through this, looking at and reviewing the programs we do deliver to make sure they're aligning with these new strategies, and to make sure that we're also looking within our own teams and making sure that those skills and the real passions that people have are also within the things that we deliver as well. So for like many of you, we had furlough. We were really lucky in terms of the department. We'd lost about 5 or 6 staff, I think, in total in kind of the 2-ish years leading up to the pandemic. So we were actually very lucky that we didn't lose anyone during the redundancy here at RZSS. But a lot of people were on furlough, some for longer than others, and some continued for part-time for quite a long time. But what was amazing is everyone was so willing and open, and they came up with the best ideas, and everyone supported each other. And we were looking at what could be done. And from the virtual things that we did during lockdown, that developed into the virtual and digital things that we could continue to do to support our communities, our families, and schools once people were back. And that was only able to be done with everyone like chipping in and having these amazing ideas, and at times definitely feeling like this. And I think one of the other things alongside that side that really kind of came through was our engagement with visitors in the park. So as David mentioned, looking beyond learning as formal learning, but looking at learning across the visitor experience, recognizing that every single person that comes to our parks are part of a visitor experience, and whether that's a school class or whether that is a daily visitor or a community group. And it's how we make sure that their experience is more than a one-off session. And that's been really important. So we had stewards, which we'd had a talks program before that you could kind of follow around the zoo, but we had stewards for the first time outside of specific events, and these were to make sure people were wearing masks and you know, keep people from building up in areas, make sure people had the information, knew how to follow the one-way route. But actually what we found more and more was that people were talking to the visitors more and more people were having a face-to-face discussion and contact with someone. And this was coming through in our feedback as something that was really positive. So we took a little bit of a step back, and we actually gained some staff during the past year. So we now have the talks program under us. We have a new manager, so a communities and discovery program manager, and discovery covers both our volunteers and our rangers as well. And what we're looking at now is how we make sure that each visitor that comes onto the site has the opportunity to have face-to-face contact with someone, and how that face-to-face contact can benefit their daily visit, how it can make them come back and make them return, how it can ensure that they take something away with them, how it can be, in some cases, the first, like almost like opening the book to them being connected. And it's really exciting to see where that's going. We're also looking at who our communities are. So I mentioned before, we're looking at our staff, we're looking at our daily visitor, we're looking at the people that come in for a session. We're also then looking at where we work. So those conservation programs that we have in different places over the world, recognizing that actually within that, there are communities as well, and how going forward, not soon, but like in a couple of years, how going forward we're going to be able to support those communities as well. So I think I just kind of want to start rounding off really. I've not gone through my pictures as quick, so I'll quickly go through the pictures so you can see some really cute animals. But I asked all of the team just yesterday, fully on the spot, what they kind of had learned over the past year or so. Pygmy baby hippo, by the way, looks like a potato, is adorable. And this is what they came up with. And there's some really exciting and interesting things in there. And what I really hope is that we, as we continue to learn, and that as we continue to develop, we take all these amazing things that we have learned over the past kind of 18 months or so, and we remember them. There's quite a lot in there that say it's okay, so don't expect everything to go the way you think it should or will, and that it's okay. And that another one I think is super important, we can all handle an awful lot more than we think that we can, but it's okay to not have to, or indeed to not handle it at all. And I think that's so important, and I think as we go forward we should remember all of these brilliant lessons that we have learned. And lastly, these guys, this is just kind of us. We're still very much learning and developing and trying to understand what it is we're doing as we're going forward, and how the strategy that we have now almost completed, how that's going to impact, and how we're going to evaluate the impacts that we're having to continually develop and improve our programs. And for me, that's learning about us as a society. Again, it's about learning as us as a team, what brings us together, what all our different motivations are and everything like that, and how we can continue to discover more and more every day. And these little penguins are us kind of waddling through and navigating it together. And that is all.